Hey y'all, welcome to Bugs and Lip Gloss. This is Whiskey with my friend Christine, and just like our my first video and what's coming in the future is we are talking about women's stories and our healing journeys and the awesome things that we do, and men also. I don't want to discount the men. So this is my friend Christine Lunsford, and hello Christine, how are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you, Whiskey. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. And how would you like to introduce yourself and what would you like people to know about your story?
Well, my name's Christine Lunsford, and currently I am actually a women's wellness coach. I specifically help women find complete wellness through alternative methods like hair analysis and DNA testing. I share it through a journey that I went through because in 2017 I was horribly sick and was basically told there was no hope. Not that I was going to die, just that there was nothing I could do. Wrong answer. That's my answer. Whenever doctors tell me that there's nothing I can do, wrong answer. Let's try again. But today, because Whiskey, I know your story and I know that the women that you're trying to reach have a slightly different journey.
Yes.
So, um, short version, long version, whatever you want to call it, I met my first husband when I was 18. He was 32. And he was actually my boss, and things were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I had an amazing many years with him, and we moved to Arkansas, and something shifted. I don't still to this day don't know what shifted, and even his mother, we started calling him one and two. I'm not going to say his name because it's just
Oh, that's fine.
so. We had one and two. One was the good guy that up until we got divorced always called me his bride. Was wonderful, and then there was number two, who was not. Um, this was a man who cussed out his dad on an international flight to Barcelona. You don't do that.
Mm-mm.
You want to get a whole lot of attention, that's a way to do it, because I was terrified that when we landed, he was going to get arrested.
Right. Or they just emergency land the plane and throw everybody off.
We're over the ocean. There
Right.
was, I mean, I was like, oh, dude, please don't do this. Please don't do this. So that was kind of what I went through towards the end. And he started to get physical. He never hit me, but he called it testing me. So, for example, one night he was mad at me, whatever, I'm going to bed, leave me alone. He came up the stairs and grabbed me by the neck. And I grew up with a dad who's bipolar. So backing me to a corner really isn't a good plan. I came up off that bed so fast and I looked at him. I said, don't you ever touch me like that again. And he said, oh, I was just testing you, laughed it off and went on his way. I'm like, I don't think so. For about 6 years, he threatened, I guess is the best word to use, with divorce, separation. Now, his family had a lot of money. So I think he thought that that wasn't going to keep me. And I always told him, I will tell you I want a divorce once. You only hear that word come out of my mouth once. Once it comes out of my mouth, there is no going back. And different things happened. I mean, he grabbed my throat. There were just so many weird things going on. The neighbor lady accused him of having an affair with her husband. And I was like, do what? Not
Wow.
with her, with her husband.
That's not
Just
one you
like,
hear very often.
no, it was just so weird. Just things just got weird with him. And one day I was in the kitchen and I'm cooking, and he walked in, and I had one of those great big insulated cups.
Mhm.
And he was on one of his rants. Now, again, I grew up with somebody who was bipolar. I know when they're standing there screaming at you, you just don't respond. Just don't
Mhm.
say anything. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't exactly being submissive. I just wasn't participating in the circus.
It was observing, not reacting.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, don't get me wrong. There were times that I reacted and screamed at him, but it was usually one or two words, enough or stop. And then
Mhm.
I'd walk away. And he grabbed my cup because I wasn't responding to him and slammed it on the floor, and it shattered into a million pieces. Me being me, I looked at him, I said, well, I guess you have a mess to clean up. And I kept cooking. And he cleaned it up, which was kind of funny that he did. And the next morning I got up and I very calmly looked at him and said, I'm done. I'm done being screamed at. I'm done with the threats. He had taken, we went out on a boat ride and I went to grab something. Now I can't swim. We're in water that's 200 feet deep. He intentionally hit the throttle to throw me forward.
Wow.
And I said, looked at him, I said, that's not very nice. He was so mad that we went back to the dock. We went home and I got screamed at for 2 hours. And he kept stopping in the middle of it and going, are you listening to me? I said, yep, I heard every word. I kept rocking in my rocking chair.
Mm-hmm.
And this had happened not too long before the glass on the floor got shattered. So after that had happened, I told him I wanted a divorce. Of course, then he starts crawdadding. And I'll do anything, I'll do anything, I'll do anything. I said, okay, fine. There's 3 things you need to do. I said, you need to go to the doctor and find out if you're bipolar. And if you are, get on medication. I said, we're going to counseling. And for the life of me, I cannot remember what the third one was. Those are the only 2 I remembered. And I said, you have to do it now. This isn't several months from now. It's now.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Well, it didn't happen. Needless to say, didn't happen. And we had a very nice conversation on how we were going to divide everything up. It was probably the best conversation we'd had in years. And this is right around my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
The very next morning, things shifted. I was like, whoa, dude. Yeah, okay.
Now, I have to ask a question really fast because I understand this in my own life and my own dealings through the years with different people. We're going to call them people. Um, did you have a sense? Did you have a gut feeling like you just felt the energy shift that like when that happened, like nothing actually had to happen yet, but you just felt it. You knew the air was different. Okay. Because that's how it's been with me with every relationship that's gone south. I knew there was an energy shift. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of like they flip a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah. And nothing has to happen yet. You just sense it.
Yeah. And I slept in the same bed with my now ex-husband every single day. Even if we were mad, we always slept in the same bed. That night, I knew better. I
Mm-hmm.
laid down on the couch, couldn't go to sleep, and I got that, you need to leave.
That niggle.
And I was like, no, I can't leave my dogs. Because at the time I had a dog and 3 puppies at the house.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it again. I was like, okay. I got up, I got the clean clothes that were in the laundry, threw them in a bag, and left. Didn't say anything to him, just left. Went to a hotel. I know he followed me because, okay, strange things. I got in the car and my radio station was changed.
Nice.
So I knew he'd been there. That doesn't make me comfortable. So I
Mm-hmm.
called him that morning because I was just going to go to work. And he's like, "Are you coming home to take care of your dogs?" I went, "I was going to go to work. Can you not open the back door and let them out?" That's all he had to do, open the door, because it was all fenced in.
Right.
I'm depressed. I can't do it. I can't do it. I went to the doctor today. I'm on medication now. I was like, "You seriously cannot open the door." So I went home. He had not let the dogs out, none of the puppies since I had left. The basement was a mess with
Mm-hmm.
dogs, and the pups were, I don't know, 2, 3 months old. It's not
Right.
like they were little. I cleaned it all up, and he was there, and it was like being trapped with, I don't know, a lion, a bear. I
Mm-hmm.
just like,
I
"Oh,
know
get me."
exactly what energy you're talking about.
I'm like, "Get me out." So I spent the night again at the hotel. And when I got up the next morning, um, he had changed the locks on the house. He had put plywood on the back deck with screws facing up so I couldn't walk on the back deck to get in the back door. He had screwed shut with a 2x4 the back patio doors because we had a walkout basement, screwed them shut. I didn't know at the time, but found out later he had went and got brackets by the front door. Now we had like a $4,000 front door. This wasn't like it was a cheap front door. And he had a 2x6 on the inside of the door.
Barricading.
I was like, "Dude, what do you think I'm gonna do?"
Right. You're trying to leave and he's trying to keep you out.
I was like, "Just give me my dogs." So I had to call the sheriff's office or the town, because it was a town.
Right.
Chief of
Oh,
police got a
anyway.
hold of him, let me have my dogs, and that's when the real fun began. It got worse.
Wow.
I didn't have to file for divorce. He did it, which was fine, whatever. I got served while I was at work. By the grace of God, I was in real estate and I had a listing that was empty. The lady had moved to California. So called her, and she was my guardian angel apparently, because I called her and I said, "Can I rent your house?" "Yes." I said, "Before you answer that question, I need to tell you I have 5 labs
Mm-hmm.
in a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 5 chocolate labs." No, I
Nice.
had 2 chocolates and 3 blacks because the blacks were the pups. But yeah,
That's a big
just
stretch for somebody to allow for someone else.
huge. I wouldn't have done it. There's
Yeah.
no way.
Right.
So I had a place to sleep. I had no furniture. I had nothing. I had nothing. I had no towels. The only thing I had were the clothes I managed to get out of my dirty clothes.
Right.
And it took me 3 weeks to get the rest of my clothes. It took me, I was also I was a pampered chef lady at the time. It took me 3 months to get my business stuff. He started calling my hosts because he had all of my stuff. He was calling my hosts and threatening them. So a couple of them canceled, rightfully so. Um, so I basically lost that business because who's going to refer you when you have the psycho that's. And he actually came to my house in the middle of the night one night and slashed all 4 tires on my car.
No
Um,
way.
and one of the labs actually heard it, and that's the only reason we caught him and knew it was him, was because Zeus was going absolutely bonkers and got up and went and looked outside, and we saw him driving away.
That's
So
crazy. Sorry, I had to mute. There was a garbage truck coming through, and I'm like, ah, okay.
So I called the sheriff's office, and it was so frustrating because I'm telling them, you need to tell the officers that he's probably armed.
Right.
I don't know what he's on
Right.
because this is not normal behavior.
No.
I finally was screaming at 911. I said, you need to tell the officer. If the officer gets hurt and you haven't told him, I am going to raise a fuss.
Right.
Turned out that the state trooper that pulled him over was when this kid was in high school, he's house sat for us.
Oh, wow. So we
So
actually knew.
he knew exactly who it was. He knew exactly what was going on, knew exactly where he would be, arrested him, and he got a DUI.
Wow.
Told ya.
Told you.
They're like, there was no guns in the car, thank goodness. But
Right.
so he did that. He posted my pictures on the internet. Pictures that I did not know he had taken.
Right. And these weren't church pictures.
No.
No.
And the only reason I knew is because I suddenly started getting text messages. Hey, I saw your profile. I want to hook up. I was
Wow.
like, do what? Now, here is my best advice for every woman out there. Do not call the man.
Mm-mm.
First thing I did was I called my attorney and said, we have another situation. And he's like, do what?
Yeah.
Now, I understand the fear of your attorney bill going through the roof. I was not going to try to handle this on my own.
Right. Well,
I
and
absolutely.
it's protecting your own security and your vulnerability and your sanity and your self-worth, and all those things are
All of your.
priceless.
Oh, you know what's funny? He changed his phone number.
Oh,
I didn't. I never did. I was like, I can
right.
block you. I have no
Right.
problem.
Right.
So, oh, and I forgot to say, when he got arrested, he also in the police statement said that he was going to slice my throat.
Oh, that's fabulous.
I went to get an order of protection, and they told me that they couldn't because it was hearsay.
That wasn't hearsay. That was in a police report. It's
Exactly.
amazing. And I have all the respect for police and LEOs and everything else, but when you really start looking at different cases and different people's stories, there are so many gaps and loopholes, and there's so many things wrong with the system when it comes to this. But anyway, carry
Well,
on.
and the biggest problem was we were married.
Right.
We
Right.
hadn't been married. If it had been a random man, I could have done something. But
Mm-hmm.
because this fell under domestic, I couldn't
Yep.
do anything. My hands were tied.
Which is completely backwards.
Because he had slashed the tires and came to my house, I was able to get an order of protection based on that.
Right.
Not because he threatened me, but because he had slashed the tires. So I was still able to get an order of protection, which honestly is just a piece of paper. But
Which, thank God it was your tires at that point, not your throat already,
exactly.
because you knew and they wouldn't listen. I'm just
That's right.
driving that point home. You know. So carry
And
on.
so that happened. Then he took some of those pictures and put them in a baby album and mailed them to my mother.
That's just,
Now,
mm, mm.
again, God was watching over me because he was bragging about it in a Dollar General, and somebody I knew overheard him and called me and said, he just mailed something to your mother.
Wow.
So that same day, I called my mom and I said, if you get a package from me, do not accept it. Send it back to me. I don't know what it is. Because at
Right.
that point, what it was. Called my attorney again, and he's like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
I said, yes. I had an awesome attorney. I'm just saying I did. So he sends it back. I don't even open it. I go straight to my attorney's office and I said, okay, we're going to open this. And he goes, no, you're going to open this. I don't want to see it because I know what he's been doing. I don't want to know. You just tell me.
Right. And thank God he did that, because could you imagine your attorney opening that book with you standing in the office?
Oh yeah. You think I'm looking turning red now? I'd have been just mortified.
It would have been
So,
beyond, it would have been devastation, not more to
oh,
it. Yeah. A whole
so
different
he,
level.
before I even left his office, he called the judge and told the judge what was going on. The judge called his attorney and said, "You need to tell your client to knock it off."
Oh yeah.
And hopefully the dogs don't bark because my husband just left.
Oh,
So
fine.
that was that was another thing that he did. I'm like, dude, can we just stop? And I stopped the officer because I knew who the officer was that had arrested him. And I happened to see him at the gas station one day, and I pulled in and I walked up to him. I said, "I need to ask you a question." I said, "And you may not be able to answer me, and I totally understand that. But as a friend, not as an officer, but as a friend, should I be afraid?" Because all of my friends and all of my family were completely freaking out.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I refuse to walk around in fear of this man. I refuse.
Right.
I'm not doing it.
And there's such a projection of fear from other people onto you because they're afraid for you.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing I want to point out again is if you're somebody who's watching this and you're in this type of situation now, pay attention to which part, if that fear is genuinely yours, because
Mhm.
people who love you end up putting fear onto you that's not actually yours, and it can really make it worse. So it's really important to pay attention to that. So go ahead, Christy.
But on the flip side, I want to say if you have people that are doing that, make yourself basically a circle of friends.
Hmm.
Don't make it a lot of friends, just a circle of friends. All of them knew where I was
Yep.
24 hours a day. They all had each other's phone numbers. If one of them couldn't get a hold of me, they would call the other one. If that person hadn't heard from me, they'd call the other one. And if nobody had heard from me, they already had a plan in place to call the sheriff's office.
Right.
So there
It
was
was
a
a phone
period of time.
tree. They had a phone
Oh,
tree.
yeah. So about 18 months, I'm like, I felt like I was 12.
Hmm.
But I tell you what, those are the people that I knew loved me.
Exactly. I'm
And
just saying when it first starts, be aware of
oh,
what is your
absolutely.
fear and what is someone else's.
And I bless, I mean, I get it. Not everybody has the personality that I have. I totally get that.
Right.
But when I asked him and he looked at me and he said, he doesn't have the balls to come after you face to face.
Hmm.
However, he said all of the assault rifles that he has purchased, because apparently he was afraid of me,
Yeah.
all of the assault rifles, he goes, if he decides he's going to kill you, you will never see it coming.
Yep.
I said, so basically, then just live my life and call it good and don't do something stupid. He goes, exactly.
Yeah. Because if you're living in that kind of fear, he already won.
You already won.
You're not living.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, those are the highlights. I know there was more to it, but, and I'll probably remember some later, but it was crazy. And I finally quit fighting with him. I was
Hmm.
trying to get the divorce done as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And it took 14 months. Now, we have no children. Really, there was nothing to fight over.
You had your own residence.
Well, I walked away, and I
Right.
want you to hear this. I walked away with the Mustang and the Honda Pilot. Both of those two were the only two things we had besides the house that we owed money on.
Hmm.
He walked away with the house, the other Mustang, both four wheelers, both boats, everything.
Hmm.
Kept all of his stocks. I took my stocks. So I walked away and did stupid stuff with the money after the fact, but that's on me.
That's part of the healing journey, I think.
That's part of the healing journey, and it just was a lesson that had to be learned. So I walked away with pretty much nothing, lost everything, eventually lost all the money, lost both vehicles. But I walked away with my integrity because I refused to play his game.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people are like, well, why don't you play dirty with him? I said, because that's not me.
Yep.
I'm not a doormat, but he can stomp around and act like a little child and try to get my attention and try to scare me. But in the end, I have to live with me.
Exactly. And you can't abandon yourself because of the situation that you're in. So
Absolutely.
what, how did it change you? Like, I know you're married now and happily married and you're still, I won't disclose where you're at, but I know you're happily married and you're doing the things that you're doing and you've advocated for yourself also with doctors. So we've gotten through, you mentioned it earlier, but what, you obviously had something inside you to begin with, right? And
Mhm.
you tapped into that. But what has changed even in that, or what has grown in your journey that's taking you further now based on all that, those things? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the women in the women's group and the ministry that I do, these are the things that I'm trying to show the examples of. This really sucked, but this is what I tapped into and this is where I'm going now. That's the focus of what's going on here. So
So
where did this take you?
I I was pretty submissive in my marriage, and not in the sense that I was abused,
Hmm.
but I always did everything to make him as happy as I could. And I'm not saying that's wrong. That's not inherently wrong. However, there were times that I gave up my principles for things that he wanted to do.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't really want to go into some of the things that had happened,
No, it's
but
whatever you want to disclose or not.
yeah, I'm just saying if you're in that position and you're doing things because he says that it's going to save the marriage, or he says that's what he really wants.
Or that makes
Um,
me the good wife.
yes.
Hmm.
So after we got divorced, it was, I probably didn't make the best decisions. I immediately moved in with a guy that I was friends with. Um, Ended up dating him for 4 years after that, and realized I had jumped from one to the other.
Repeated cycle.
Yeah, well, I went from one that was very controlling to one that was very, very sweet, but never worked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I am not raising a 30-year-old child. Get
Yep.
out. And when I kicked him out, I was all alone.
Hmm.
For the first time in my life, I was living completely alone. It was weird.
Uh-huh. It's a
And it was,
kind of freedom that most people aren't used to.
oh, it was a huge transition. I was like, because I lived 500 miles from family.
Hmm.
They're all like, oh, you can move back. No, I'm not moving back. And in that time, I found me.
Hmm.
And when I was ready to start dating again, I was able to very quickly go, you're not marriage material. No.
Yeah, it's not a red flag anymore. It's a red billboard. Like it went
Yeah.
from I missed it this little to it was a giant sign.
I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
run. And of course, friends are going, you need to give him a chance. No, I don't.
Yeah. You're like,
No, I don't.
but he's
I
so
know
nice.
now.
No.
You, okay, ladies and guys, this is true for both. Take this away. This is something I did learn, and this is something that was a huge shift for me. And don't ask me where I learned it because I don't remember. I sat down one day and wrote, because I had been dating and going, this is getting stupid. Either it's me, or I'm just not ready, or I just keep picking the wrong ones. So I sat down and I wrote, must have. They must have these things. They must be um, God fearing. They must be employed. They must be nice. They must have a sense of humor. And I wrote these things down. Then I wrote, they must not have.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that list. And then I wrote, it would be nice if they have. So
Right.
on my, what the one thing I'd laugh about that was on my, it'd be nice if they have, is that they're taller than me. That was
Right.
it would be nice if they were taller than me, because
Yeah, I'm 5'10". That's yeah,
yeah. So
I get
you
it.
understand, it would be
Yeah.
nice if. So my sister started calling me a puppy stomper. No, I have to. No, I have to explain that because of how.
Especially with the puppy whining in the background, because
I know you kind of have to
oh, you're
ignore.
fine, you're fine. I love
Very,
dogs, and most people I know love dogs, so.
he is very dramatic. He's 4 months old, and
And a
yeah,
Jack
he's very
Russell.
and a Jack Russell. He's just very dramatic. They're not all like this one that's Miss Cadillac here.
Right.
So, okay, puppy stomper. I was like, I lost my train of thought. So my sister started calling me a puppy stomper, and I started laughing, and I was like, "What are you talking about? I would never stomp a puppy." And she goes, "No, you start dating these guys, they start following you around like puppies. Which, if anybody's already started dating and the guy thinks he likes you, they kind of do that. And I would decide you're not on my list. You don't fit my list.
You don't
Sorry,
tick the boxes.
you don't check the boxes." And I would release them
Uh-huh.
very quickly, like usually within 3 to 4 dates, because I'd let him get past the first date unless it was absolutely horrendous,
Right.
because it's not fair to judge them that quickly. But I would turn around and stomp on them. And I didn't try to. I would just be like, okay, this isn't working. And I had more than one guy that would start crying, and I'm like, dude, you haven't known me long enough to love me.
Yeah, you're there's the big red flag. The red
A
flag
big red
after the
flag.
fact.
Like, oh my goodness. So I started doing that. And
Mhm.
one night I was in my kitchen screaming at God, screaming at him. I'm like, why do I keep attracting these people?
Because it makes
Why am I in this circle? Get
why
me
am I a
out of this
magnet?
circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why am I a
And my
magnet?
sister laughed and she said, maybe you're not ready. And me being my snarky little self said, maybe he's not ready for me.
Boom.
And
Maybe it's
that
both.
was the truth. It
Yeah.
was the truth, because he wasn't in a position that he wanted to date. And so I pulled back
Mm-hmm.
and went, I'm done.
Time
I
for
started I was doing yard work and I was trimming trees. Loppers became my best friend because I would chop things, and I
you
had
went
a
from
20-foot.
stompers to lompers.
So I had loppers all the time. Now, anybody who has trimmed anything in the yard, using loppers is not exactly physically easy, but I had a 20-foot long, 8-foot tall pile of shrubs that I cut down.
Your
So,
poor trees.
oh yeah, well, they needed it.
I know, I'm just messing.
Oh no, they got butched, but I needed it. So it is possible to get out of that.
Right.
And it is possible to be in a situation where I was, that the highs were very high, the lows were very low.
Yeah. And what I tell people with those relationships, and even your own personal cycle afterward, is when it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's horrid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you can't discount the horrid ones because you had some good ones. They don't, it's not math. You're not trying to balance it out here. It's either there
No,
or it's not. And don't ignore it if it's there, you
that's
know.
right.
And then
I actually
go ahead.
had a friend. I was in California. I was at a conference. He decided to go with me. And the people that I was with, now these are pretty much coworkers. I mean, you're kind of more friends, but
Right.
coworkers, physically witnessed him screaming at me and threatening to get on the airplane if I left that hotel room and went out with the girls.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I looked at him and I said, there's the airplane tickets. Goodbye. And I walked out. Now, of course, once I walked outside, I started bawling it ridiculously, and they had to calm me down, and bless their hearts, they put up with me. And the very next day,
They loved you
he
through
came,
it. They didn't put up with you. They loved you through it.
they loved me through it. And the very next day, he shows up at the conference. He had went and bought me a toe ring and brought me flowers.
Love bombing. Ta-da! There's the cycle.
There's the cycle.
Yep.
And all the girls even then were like, oh, he's so sweet. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's not what you were saying last night.
Till the next one.
Till the next one.
You
And
know,
those cycles started getting closer to closer together. So
yeah, once you have the awareness that you can start seeing the cycle repeating, you're like, oh, I see it. And
I see.
I've had friends that are like, well, I didn't understand talking to you. Like one day you're on top of the world, and the next day it's just everything's horrible. And the next day you're on top of the world. The next day everything's horrible. And I'm like, sweetie, it's the cycle,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily, you have to give yourself some grace until you understand, because you don't necessarily understand or even see that you're in it, because it's such a roller coaster and you're so close to it that you can't necessarily get away from it and get perspective on your own. Even if, like in my example, I help other women in this group to identify these cycles and to break them and not repeat them, while at the same time, I was in one, you
Mhm.
know, and the more I help them and the more I see things, I was like, oh, crap, so give yourself the grace, ladies and gentlemen, to understand that you didn't know what you didn't know, but once
Absolutely.
you do, it's time to do something. Um,
Yes.
and then the last thing I was going to say on that, is, uh, I spoke to a woman recently and she's like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. She's starting to get the awareness now. And she's like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know where to start. And what I told her was the number one thing to start with is finding you. Find your purpose, find what's going to fill that hole. Because when you rip yourself out of these situations, or they discard you and you get ripped out of those situations, because that's a possibility too, there's something's got to be there to physically and emotionally fill that need, or else you're going to end up begging to have your abuser back, which is what keeps repeating this cycle over and over and over. And it may not be that person, it might be another abuser in a different body, but
Mhm.
it's the same cycle. So think back when you were a kid. What did you want to do with you when you were a kid? What did you love? Because that's usually that innate thing that's gonna to help fill your soul, you know, or volunteer or go work with animals, or just find something that's you. And the more that you find you and you change that energy with you, the more that other cycle and that other phase is, it's actually a lot of it, the energy level changes, and it just cannot exist in your world anymore. And
Mhm.
either it will leave you or you will naturally have to leave it, because it's so incongruent. It's not going to work anymore. So,
Yep. There's one thing I did that
mhm,
saved while I was in it and also while I got out of it. I journaled everything.
mhm. Yeah, writing it
And
down makes a big difference.
I journaled everything, and it saved me more than once, because when I was in the middle of the divorce, he said he wanted the my journal to be submitted as evidence. And I walked into my attorney and started laughing, and I said, "Do you want to read it?" Because I
Mhm.
guarantee he doesn't want it in court.
Yeah, it's submissible as evidence, y'all. A journal and a
It
phone log
is.
is submissible as evidence.
Well, 2 years after we got divorced, my hunting rifle that I got in the divorce, he reported as stolen.
Mhm.
Lo and behold, the town um, chief of police at the time was a friend of a friend, actually cousin of a friend.
Right.
He called me and he goes, "Do you still have that gun?" I said, "Well, yeah. Why?" And he goes, "Your ex just reported it stolen."
Wow.
I went, "Okay, well, tell him to come see it." So I got it out and broke it so they knew that there was no ammo in it, laid it down, and I stepped on the other side of the room when they came in, and I had my journal in my hand and I was flipping through it. And he goes, I said, it's over there. I said, you can check the serial number and everything. And I said, but I'm looking to see what date I have it documented that I got it in the divorce. And he looked at me, he goes, you have that written down? I said, oh yeah, I write down everything. And
Mhm.
he goes, remember never to piss you off.
Right. There's when you're brain smart and street smart, when you take the time to control to not react, to observe and document and not react, it pays you back in dividends. And that's not just in divorce, it's not just in these cases, that's in life in general.
Life in
Don't
general.
react, observe, you
Mhm,
know. So, and my dad used to always tell me too, like if you needed to send somebody a letter of something that was important, you send two copies, one to you and one to them, and the one that comes to you, never open it. But
mhm,
because you have a duplicate of whatever it was you mailed out, it is legal and binding because it went through the postal service and it has a postmark on it. So if
mhm,
anything ever happens on that end, you have your own proof that you sent yourself one at the same time.
mhm.
And I'm like, that's genius. And it cost you 52 cents or whatever the postage is at the time. Right.
Yes,
So, oh, I'm so glad we got to talk today. Thank you. Um,
me too.
before and I told my other guests too, if there's anything else that comes up or you watch any of the other episodes or something else that you want to speak on, you by all means, you're welcome back. Excuse me. And also before we go, I'm going to leave in the comments the link to my travel journal, because if you don't know, I'm actually nomading on a Harley while I'm running a ministry for women and awareness for domestic abuse. I have my Venmo and my Cash App and my Go Give Send Go fundraiser going on to help me keep this ministry on the road and to help me just live this life that I've chose to heal it myself while I'm bringing awareness for everybody else, and to help me be a better gift and service to other people that I help on the road as well. So that will all be in the comments and or in the video description. And Christine, thank you so much for coming and sitting with me today. And I love you, and everybody keep on
Thank
rocking.
you, and Whiskey. Thank
Yes,
you for
ma'am.
doing this for women, because I think I came out on easy, but I know it's not easy for a lot of women. So thank you for doing this for everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. The more we can do this, the more I can do this, and the more that we can help heal, the less people will have to do it in the long run, because we can hopefully stop it from happening in the first place. And then their children will grow up in a different dynamic also. So we're not just healing and correcting, we're also helping prevent. So
That's
thank you.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you. And we will talk
I'll
until later. And keep on rocking. I can never find a button. Bye.